Hi, students. My name is Professor Gonzalez, and welcome to Family Systems Theory in Marriage and Family Systems. Um, I am going to provide you with a very brief lecture on family systems theories just to get our class started, our week started. Um, as you will notice me explain different theories and some of the material that we're going to go through, I will be using myself as an example. Why? Because I like to overshare. No, that's not why. Uh, the reason why I like to use myself as an example, the reasons why, one of them is because I want to normalize some of the material that we're studying, and I want to give you, I just think it's powerful to see that as you identify some things that may be going on with you or with your family, that you are not alone, that it is also a shared experience. And some of the things are very, very common, but we're just unaware of it because nobody talks about it. And also, sometimes we're not even aware about it. So that's one of the reasons I really want to normalize some of our experiences. And another one is because I want you to have real life examples of what that looks like. Because one thing is to read the theory, and the other is to see it in practice, right? I can read a book and I understand the concept in the book, but what does that really look like? So I use myself as an example here and there, so you can see what that really looks like in real life. And the third one is because in this course, you will be doing a lot of writing, but your writing is really processing. And so I'm asking you to be very vulnerable, and I'm asking you to share parts of your life that you wouldn't otherwise share with me. And so I don't want to leave you hanging out on a limb. I want to know that I'm willing to share some of my stuff too, so that you don't feel so vulnerable out there by yourself. Okay. So we're moving forward through the slides, I will be reading from my books and my notes. So please don't judge me for doing that. I'm trying to give you the most accurate information. Okay. So family systems theory was introduced and developed by Dr. Murray Bowen. He was a psychiatrist, a professor, a clinician. He was a writer, a creator, and so he is a very high contributor to the mental health profession, and his work is very highly praised and considered important in our field. Um, he was highly impacted by the psychodynamic approach, and he believed that the relationship between parents and children was important, that parents, just as their parents, would pass down roles, values, behaviors, energy, for lack of a better word. We would just kind of receive it from our parents and then pass it down to our children. And these things were observable, right? People on the outside looking in could realize and notice kind of like these behavioral patterns, even things such as professional inclinations we could see, right? Like there's families where you see, um, a lot of construction workers or a lot of police officers or generations of people being in the military, right? Or pastoral families. Sometimes that runs in the family. Um, so some of these things we can very clearly see, right? And we know that patterns kind of follow families across generations, and this includes family values, religious behavior, and even dysfunctions. So we're going to cover some key terms that are going to be helpful with some of your assignments as we move forward in the course. The key terms are, and please excuse my accent as I'm trying to say this. Spanish is my first language, so sometimes I get a little tongue-tied. But the key terms that we're going to study are roles, rules, homeostasis, individualism, differentiation, triangulation, and emotional cutoff. Here we have a picture of Dr. Bowen, and he is teaching on his on the genogram. So he's explaining the genogram, and you will be doing your own genogram, and you're going to use yourself as a focal point and move out into your family. And so you'll be looking at your parents, and you'll be looking at your siblings, and then you'll be looking at your grandparents. So we're going to do 3 generations. And so here's Mr. Bowen. Just wanted you guys to see what he looks like. And these are going to be your key terms. Okay. So the first thing we're going to look at as the double R's is your rules and your role, right? Keep calm and follow the rules. Um, Rules are meant to be broken, right? Just kidding. Rules are meant to be followed. And whether they are spoken or unspoken, whether someone explained the rules clearly or not, there are definite rules within a family system. Rules about how we talk to each other, right? Communication patterns, rules about authority. Who has more authority in the home, right? And do we question it or not? And do other people have authority at all? Is it shared? Right? We have rules about how we worship God, right? If the family is used to worshiping a certain way, but someone goes out of that norm, then they've now broken a rule in the family. And some parents are very clear about explaining the rules, and some are not, but the rules are still there. And if they're broken, there will be consequences, even in healthy families. Okay. We also have roles within our family. And this is kind of like a comical little image about different roles in the family, but there's actually nothing funny about them in real life. As you're looking through these, right? The family mascot, the lost child, the problem child, the family hero, they all have things that identify them, what they present, right? What people see on the outside, but also kind of like the internal mechanism, right? What's going on the inside when people present in this way. And so, for example, I see myself on this chart. I would be the caretaker, the family hero. I'm also the oldest of 4 children in a Mexican family, and I happen to be a female. A social worker by training, a therapist. So as you can see, that kind of has followed me, and kind of informed some of my professional decisions as well, right? What do therapists do? We take care of people. What do social workers do? We take care of people. And so on the outside, these folk are very high achievers. We follow the rules. Um, we seek approval from others. We want people to like us. And we're very, very responsible, like high up there, right? I want to do things right. But on the inside, we're driven, and this is not like a box, like everybody should fit in this box, but that's just some keys, right? Um, Sometimes we're driven by inadequacy, like feeling like we're not good enough or we don't fit in. And so we push and push and push, um, to try to be all of the things for everybody. There's some guilt attached to that, and there could be some pain attached to that as well. But we also see, kind of like, what would be another good example? The family mascot. So who is that? The family clown, the one that is always cracking jokes, everybody's laughing with, always trying to lighten the mood, right? They walk in the room and you just know that person's gonna make us all laugh. They're gonna make a joke out of something, right? And they can be perceived on the outside as people who are immature, um, or who are hyperactive, right? Or even like distracting, right? Like, we're trying to do something, right? You're so distracting. But on the inside, they may be driven by fear And sometimes the reason why they want to lighten the mood is because the mood is always so tense to them and they don't know how to deal with it, right? They're scared of the system. Sometimes they present with a lot of anxiety, right? Anxiety is fear, and insecurity. I want to be liked. I want to be safe. So that's just a little snippet of rules and roles. The next term that is very important for us to kind of grasp as we move through this is homeostasis. Homeostasis. And this is a tendency towards a relatively stable equilibrium between interdependent elements. And so this we see in biology, we see in nature, but we also see it in psychology, specifically in family systems theory. And really what this means is normality and balance, right? Um, and the family system seeks to maintain its customary organization and function over time, and it tends to resist change. What does that mean? That means that even though the rules and the roles may be all busted, all messed up, they're not very helpful, right? We have a lot of crazy stuff going on, a lot of dysfunction. People are not happy, people are not healthy, people are not well. This is our normal. This is our balance. This is what we're used to. And anything out of the ordinary would just kind of make us feel discombobulated, you know? We're no longer zen. We're no longer at the norm, at our baseline. We're not where we used to be. We're not where we feel comfortable. And because of homeostasis, individuals in the system and the system itself resist change, even when change is necessary, even when change is appropriate, even when change is positive and it's good for us. There's still a resistance because I want everything to go back to normal because that's my balance. That's where I feel more comfortable. The change produces too much discomfort. Who would I be if I wasn't the helper? Who would I be if I wouldn't be the caretaker of my family? Where does that put me? Where does that put everybody else? Right? Does that make sense? I hope so. The next two terms are individualism and differentiation. Now, individualism is a very Western term, right? Me and my husband are both Mexican, but we have a different level of acculturation, right? And this happens with immigrant families, right? The longer you spend in a different country, then you become a little bit more like mm, the dominant culture of where you are. Now, if you think about me and my husband, I migrated here when I was 3 years old. The US is my country. I read, write, and you can in I can move in Spanish, but English is what I consider to be my language, right? My husband is a monolingual Spanish speaking man because he migrated when he was 20. And so he speaks Spanish, he reads Spanish, he thinks in Spanish while I think in English, right? We're both Mexican, but we think about individuality differently. I was raised by my father and my mother, um, not together in different seasons. And I'm used to my siblings, right? So that's my family. My husband was raised by his father, his mother, his siblings all the time together, but also they lived in very close proximity to uncles and aunts and cousins and grandparents, and the family was very united. You were raised by the village in every sense of the word, right? So his family system could be bigger. And individualism is not a good thing in collective cultures such as ourselves, right? Because we're used to having influence from different family members, and we place high value on advice and kind of caregiving and wisdom and direction from our elders. We enjoy it. But like I said, my husband does more than me, right? Even though we're both Mexican. Why? Because I was raised in the US, right? In California, which is probably one of the most individualistic parts of the country, right? But individualism in this sense is a good thing. Is it's this little blue guy with the beautiful big white smile, enjoying kind of like an aha moment. There is an experience of awareness that you are not like the system and you are not the system. You can have different opinions and different ideas and different values. And you're kind of like flourishing and understanding that. And you are like walking into the best like shape of yourself. It's kind of like actualization, I guess, but in a more Christian way, the way I see it, it's kind of like embracing your identity in Christ, understanding how God has created you to be unique, and enjoying that, right? And not feeling bad about it, and not feeling like you have to make excuses or you have to explain it away. um, you're enjoying it, you're admiring it, right? Differentiation is this state of emotional and relational maturity. And so I like that in the previous picture, you see the little blue guy with all the other yellow people around him, right? In differentiation, you are embracing your individuality, but you're also taking care of the relationships that you have with your family members, right? There's people here that you identify that you love and you want to feel close to. These people are important to you. And so you're taking actual steps to stay connected, to keep that emotional connection to them. And that's hard because by you being different than the system, inherently, there's going to be some pushback because you're stepping out of your role and you're breaking some of the rules, and you're messing up our balance, man. You're like ruining our vibe here. And so families will resist and push it back. But are you able to embrace who you are while still staying connected to them? That's not always possible. And that process actually takes many, many years, and it takes a lot of purposeful work, a lot of internal growth. Not everybody reaches it, and it has nothing to do with your age. You can have people that are older than you that have not reached differentiation. So it's really just a very personal journey. So if you kind of just see it and you're already casting judgment on yourself, please hold back that judgment. And give yourself grace because it's not an easy process. Um, yeah, give yourself grace. Please, please enjoy the grace that God has given us. These are the final two terms that we're going to cover in this very short lecture. One of them is triangulation. And I want you to think about a triangle, literally, right? And a person at each part of that corner. That's what triangulation would look like. Triangulation occurs when there is a problem or a tension, a situation, whatever you may call it, between a dyad. So there's two people that are experiencing this phenomenon between them, right? But it has become overwhelming, and one of them can't take it anymore, right? You feel like you're going to implode, right? And so you pull somebody else from the family to kind of share in the tension, right? The energy that was trapped in these two people has now expanded into three people, and there's a release of that tension. People experience some kind of relief, which is a very high motivator to continue doing it, right? But It's not healthy. It's not healthy because at times what you're ending up doing is putting another person against the person that you have this tension with. Um, you're also not resolving the issue. Um, you're just kind of like releasing the tension temporarily. Um, and you feel so much better that you don't really have to do anything else about it. So that's one way of kind of like avoiding, right? Um, it's like an avoidance behavior too. We see this in families all the time. You're probably saying, "Hi, I do that," or someone does that to me, or I've seen that done between my cousins or my uncle or whatever. Um, but we see it even with the best intentions, right? Like sometimes we see parents that are hyper fixated on the behavior of a child, right? And the reason why that occurs is because there's so much tension in the marriage relationship, right? There's things that haven't been worked out, things that haven't been forgiven, or just things that need to transition into healthier patterns or behaviors or ways of thinking. And it's so hard that we can just focus on what's happening in front of us so that we don't focus on what's happening between us, right? Um, And then we have emotional cutoff. And so emotional cutoff literally describes how people manage their unresolved emotional issues with parents, siblings, and other family members. And this is by reducing or totally cutting off emotional contact with them. We can do this physically, like putting cities and miles and states and countries between us. And we can cut off communication. When you block someone on social media, who's been blocked on social media? Just kidding, don't tell me. Um, when someone blocks you off of social media, or when you do the same, right? And or you stop answering their phone calls, right? Delete their number. Um, or somebody does it to you. It is a process of separation, right? It's a process of isolation. It's a process of withdrawal. It's a process of running away. And this is not the healthiest way of dealing with emotional conflict. Not very highly recommended. Some people, you can see that this spills over to other domains. And so, not just your family, but maybe very easy to cut off friends and very easily to cut off coworkers. And you see this because as you follow their trajectory, they don't have very old friendships. Or very meaningful relationships, really, because they've cut off so many people, right? It's like new year, new me, it's a new season. And so that happens as well. Um, and it also can be seen intergenerationally, right? Like my grandparents used to do that, and so my parents learned how to do that, and my parents do that, and so I learned how to do that, and we're just expert emotional cut offers or whatever. Um, Sometimes, though, when there's a lot of trauma in the system or when there's a lot of dysfunction in the system and the hope for change is very little, cutoff may be the most appropriate. And while therapists don't give advice and we definitely don't suggest things like this, we may guide you into making the best decision for yourself. We may present some ideas, we may kind of um, measure your motivation for how long you want to stay in the system that continues to hurt um, after you've done so many other things to try to resolve it, right? Um, so sometimes it's not dysfunctional. Sometimes it can be appropriate depending on the situation, depending on the context. And so I'm gonna cut it off right there. This is the end of our very first lecture together on our brief introduction to family systems theory. I want you to know that every term that we discussed today probably has libraries full of books just for each term. So please do not believe that you are an expert in any way, shape, or form. Just know that I've given you a little taste that's going to inform and help your process as you move through this class.